Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. August has come to a close, which means it's time for our September 1st library update for 2023. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please make sure that you do. It's the best way to help us grow. And for those of you already subscribed, thank you so much for the continuous support. In this video, we're going to take a look at all of the new arrivals, all of the upgrades, everything that entered the SideGame library during the month of August for 2023, as well as talk about all of the pre-orders that we're looking forward to getting into the library in hopefully the near future. With that all being said, if you have any questions about anything that I talk about here, please leave me a comment down below. I'll make sure to respond to those. And for links to anything that I talk about here, take a look in the description. Let's get started talking about all of the board games that entered the library during the month of August 2023. Now, starting off with our new arrivals, we have an expansion for Bonfire. This is Trees and Creatures. This adds 3 different modules to the game, and the first module is a special powers and abilities module. Now, this is one I enjoy as it gives you some direction during the early game, as well as gives you some super powerful actions that you're going to be using throughout your entire experience. And you can customize these powers through the use of the different ability cards with the gnomes that you can purchase, so you can even tailor these effects to be even more efficient or to delve into the different strategies so you're not stuck on one specific path. I like this expansion a lot, and I can see myself playing this with any amount of people, even if they're new to the game, because this is going to give players something that they can latch onto with this huge free-form puzzle that is Bonfire. Now, the one part of this module that I don't like is the events module, and these are these little cards that will give passive abilities to all of the different players, and they're pretty arbitrary in how they work. It's hard to tell when something's going to come out, and the effects of them are super swingy, as having a key card come out at a specific time may completely throw the game for you or give it to somebody else, or you may get it and feel like you don't really deserve the win. It's not a great expansion in my opinion, and it's a module that I probably won't be using. The other thing is it's tied to the first player, so whenever the first player decides to take sort of a pass action, they're placing one of these tiles into their main area, that's when the event changes. So the first player also gets to dictate the flow of the events, and that determines who's able to benefit from them at some times, and that's going to add to that frustration of not being able to use an ability or having just missed one when somebody does decide to pass. So giving a bit more options to that first player. So not a big fan of the event module. And the last module is the trees. Haven't played with this one, but it does look like it extends the core mechanisms of building out this area in front of you, and just haven't played with it yet. Looking forward to trying it the next time we play Bonfire. So that is Bonfire, Trees, and Creatures. Next up are the expansions for Clash of Decks. This is Season 3. They add brand new abilities to the game, 4 new decks, and one of my favorite abilities here is the Enchain effect. In this game, you're trying to defeat your opponent by moving their hand of cards. There's a fortress in there, and every time you deal damage, it moves it to the right. If it makes it to the far right, then that deals a damage to the fortress. It flips over, and if it happens again, you win. One of the new effects here in Chain allows you to temporarily take a card from your opponent's hand and hide it underneath that character. So you get to see what it is, you see where it is in the position, and you're holding it hostage until your creature is defeated. It's a great way to cheat some extra damage into the fortress and rush towards that endgame, and it gives your opponent priority targets that they want to defeat so they can get their cards back. You've got all sorts of other effects and then recursions of older effects in the game, and one of my favorite revisited effects is the mana cost for health. So you can play cards at a discount by paying health here, that little blood symbol. I'm still enjoying Clash of Decks as a 2-player head-to-head game, as well as a solo mode. I love the drafting system and how you have to defeat the gauntlet of enemies, all the cards you didn't draft. It's exciting, and with these new abilities, it's going to be fresh and fun as you switch between the decks for different encounters. So that is Clash of Decks Season 3. Next up is the expansion for Witchstone. This is Full Moon. It adds 3 modules, very similar to the Bonfire expansion, and the first module is just superfluous in my opinion. It's a bunch of miniatures that replace some of the original pieces in the game. It gives you like a small little expansion if you want to use it, but it's negligible. It's like no points at all, and everyone's going to use it and do it in the exact same way. So it's almost like it's not even there. So that's what the miniatures do. They do also provide these tower miniatures so that you can clearly see which spaces are towers, because the art can get a little obscured based on when the tokens are being placed. So something that is just there. The other 2 expansions I think are pretty great. The first one is a special player power expansion. It gives you 2 different abilities you can choose from each turn, one that gives you a specific type of symbol, so it's going to encourage you to go down a specific route to get extra bonuses, and then another that has another effect that ties into a different type of action, also gives you a reason to pursue that specific strategy. It's great for players that need some direction, but I do think it's a fun option to be able to go into the different mini games in this one, and so I can see myself using it, not one that I'm going to use all the time. But the last expansion here I think is a lot of fun. It gives you these extra objectives to chase for on all of the different mini games, giving you these new new double tokens that are going to get put into your pot to strengthen specific types of actions. So I think it's cool that they are tied to each minigame, so each one has their own type, and then it's first come, first serve on those specific types. So I like that. It gives you more abilities, meaning that you're getting to do more powerful actions sooner. So that is the Witchstone Full Moon expansion. Next are 2 decks for Summoner Wars, starting off with the High Elves, and I just want to say that the High Elves as well as the Swamp Orcs here are some of my favorite decks to come out for Summoner Wars. They're straight and to the point in how they work, so it's easy to get in and start using them. Great for new players, but they feel powerful and have strategies that are things that you can get into and make a lot of sense. Maybe not a lot of depth here, but from first impressions and playing back and forth with playing twice with the different decks, I'm having a lot of fun with the High Elves and the Swamp Orcs. So the High Elves have an ability where their characters get stronger the more of them that are out on the board. So you may have a tiny character that says, hey, all of the adjacent characters get extra attack, and then another one that reduces the damage they take. So you want to get out a bunch of minions, have them next to each other, and then swarm on the opponents so you share through all of those bonuses. A lot of fun. And then the Summoner, the Swamp Orcs here for Muglug and his gang, they're going to be using these boost counters in order to charge up their abilities, and they do so from moving as well as triggering their effects, and they can spend those for additional attacks. So you're rolling more dice, you're caring about positioning, and then the summoner themselves can actually take the boost from all of their other characters to charge up their own effects. It's one of those summoners that you feel good about getting out into the battle and dealing a lot of damage with. It rewards you for moving cleverly and then attacking with giant hits. Muglug and the Swamp Orcs are a lot of fun. So that's the Swamp Orcs as well as the High Elves from Plaid Hat Games for Summoner Wars. Next are a set of games, and these are from Itten Games, 4 tiny small box games, starting off with Viking See-Saw, and this is my favorite out of the bunch. This is a tiny little dexterity game where you're balancing on this Viking ship, and you're doing so by placing these irregular shaped pieces, but the entire packaging and approach to this game is simple and easy to get into. It's got a self-built-in timer with the way that the game progresses. Every time you place something, if it tilts, then you have to take one of the treasure chests in the middle, and you're trying to get rid of all your stuff so you don't want it to tilt. You're trying to place as close to the center as possible, but also not trying to disrupt anything because you're trying to get rid of everything without tilting it. So it's a lot of fun being spatially aware as well as being aware of the weight of the different items. And so the game is over if somebody runs out of pieces or if all of those chests in the center run out. So built-in timer as well as easy to play. It's got a great appeal and table presence. A lot of fun. This is Viking See-Saw. Next up is Ninja Master, another fun game that has great table presence and is going to get people excited and tests a skill of subitization. I believe that's a correct term. It's from my teaching career, where you are quickly trying to identify how much of certain things there are. So, for example, you look at this page and you're trying to figure out exactly how many ninjas are showing. So you look at the board and you see 7, 8, 9, 10, and then if you're the first person to say it, you get additional points and you trigger the end of the round. But you're also trying to count up for each specific type of ninja because you can grab 2 objects each round and you'll gain points based on how many ninjas are showing. So you want to grab that green one because there are 4. And if you do grab a ninja that also has a smoke pillar, then those are actually negative points instead. And you also have this interesting ebb and flow of points, as when you are the leader in this game, you are in a vulnerable position because there's a katana that's out there. And if there's more katanas showing, you can grab the katana and steal half the points of the winning player. So the points move around, and it's almost like a hot potato. If you're doing well, then you have to be extremely careful about potentially losing more points. And also, if that is the what's going on, if you are winning, you have less hands that you can use to take more points, so it allows the other players at the table opportunities to grab the other point value pieces that are actually out there. So it does a good way of giving a catch-up mechanism for this, and it's a simple production value and tests some of your skills that you might not use on the regular. So interesting take on subitization. This is the Ninja Master game from Itten Games. Next is Nessie's True Identity, and this was a pleasant surprise as well. A interesting combination of wavelength and Dixit as you're trying to give clues in order to find Nessie's location. So essentially you have a word, sort of 20 question styles, and you'll give clues to this word. And then players will say a noun, something, and your goal is to move this little boat down here closer to Nessie or further away from Nessie. And then the WHAT is just the counter for the rounds. And eventually you want somebody to get that word correct. And so you bring it closer, and if somebody's correct, you bring the boat all the way to Nessie. But you want to do so in a way where you're not too obvious in your answer, because once somebody does say the correct answer, whoever is playing playing, they have to decide amongst all of them who actually said the correct answer. You're not going to tell which word is the correct answer. And sometimes that can be a little confusing because based on the way you're giving clues, maybe something anybody had said could have actually been the correct thing. It's a cool concept and one that I think works best when you actually play through it. But Nessie's True Identity, cool combination of something like Dixit as well as Wavelength. And then the last game that we got from them was Yeti in the House, and this game is bad. Not a big fan of this one. You are playing as a photographer. So you have this little Yeti that you're hiding in your house, and then you take a picture of it, Sasquatch style, where it's a little blurred and it looks like they're hiding away. So you put it somewhere in the house, you take a picture, and then from this specific vantage point, the players of the game have to figure out where the Yeti actually is in the room that you're playing in. And you also have these two little foot tokens that you're going to put as distractions to try to get the other players to say, oh, that's actually the Yeti token, trying to throw them off. It sounds cool in practice. The rules make it look like it makes sense, but what this game leads to is a lot of downtime as players are just sort of sitting there waiting for somebody to find a good spot for the Yeti. And then when the game is actually happening, it's just a lot of looking and searching and super uninteresting, honestly. Not that exciting, pretty boring, and overall I'm just not enjoying this one. So having to sit down and wait, and then the game that you waited for is not exciting. That's Yeti in the House. I can't recommend this one at all. I think I might go actually in and change my rating down to a 2. So yeah, let me make sure that's correct. Yeah, I'm not going to play this one ever again. So let's bring that down to a 2. So that is Yeti in the House. Not a great game at all. Next up is Everdell Farshore. As you can tell by the thumbnail, pretty impressed with this one. Everdell Farshore took all of the original ideas from the original Everdell and fixed every problem. It streamlined a lot of instances, gave you more options, and then gave reasons to do all of the different types of actions. So each card gives you the ability to do an instant effect. They give you effects that are passive. They give you effects that are resource generation, and they also give you action spaces. As the game progresses, they remove the action spaces, which bolsters up those action spaces for yourself, so that's something you actually want to invest in. You are racing to get specific symbols, as there's a set collection bonus for diversifying, but also specializing, and then you'll have more options overall with the different cards because now there's a stacking system that's going to allow you to have more choices every single turn. I also love that they've incorporated this boat mechanism that gives you more wild resources and more versatility, and then they've changed the way that you play cards for free with an anchor system, which is going to allow you to match any location with any creature that share the same color, which feeds into the set collection bonuses, as well as give you some interesting early game options as well as end game options where you're weighing which one is more important in the moment and what certain plays that you can actually perform. Love the choice and how the game has been taken from the old version and made anew. The art style is awesome. The theme is excellent. Everdell Farshore is my preferred version of Everdell Farshore, which is a shame because all of the expansions are from the original one. I also love the little location tokens here. They encourage you to play different types of cards for additional bonuses by moving on that boat track. So it might say like play unique critters in order to do bonuses. So it's going to push you to play things you might not normally have in a previous game and allow you to explore the different cards that are available in Farshore. Love this one. Excellent sequel. This is Everdell Farshore. Next is the Mosaic expansion, Wars and Disasters. It adds the Wars and Disasters module. It also offers special abilities for all of the different factions. I enjoy the special abilities a lot. They give you new things that are going to trigger during the Empire scoring phases, and then when you pair them with the abilities of your leaders, you get unique combinations. So you're not always having the same effects each time. Now, the first part is the War portion, and I think that the War portion is amazing. It adds this new boat character that you can summon. It's at a higher price, but you're able to actually play them anywhere. They're strong, and they're allowing you to get additional trade goods, which opens up extra ways to get extra scoring at the end game. I love that. You're also going to have a interesting way to move your different characters with these war tactic abilities, and I think that is awesome. The Disasters portion, on the other hand, is one that I didn't enjoy not much at all. You shuffle them into the different decks, and when they show up, a negative effect happens to the person that just isn't doing the greatest at whatever the disaster says. For example, if you don't have the most green symbols, you lose a population, or you lose a a specific amount of a resource, and you just got to deal with it. And a lot of the times it's pretty negligible. I play this game primarily at higher player counts. I don't like it at the lower player counts because those decks just take forever to get through, and I feel like the games take forever. But the disasters, when you're playing in those higher player counts, they affect somebody, and it's pretty negligible because you're only losing like a couple of food. So for example, this famine here, you lose 5 food. Not a big deal, and it just seems like something that it's not a lot of extra setup, but it is extra setup to play with something that almost doesn't affect the game at all. You're so focused on racing to those achievements and goals that you don't really want to put a lot of time into preparing for these disasters, because the game doesn't, you can see which disasters are coming because they're all put out there available, but you don't really care about them when they show up. It's not worth fretting about. So that is the Mosaic Wars and Disaster expansion. I love the War expansion. The disasters ones, I don't know how often I'm going to use that. Next up is the Next Evolution box for Marvel Champions. This is the expansion I've been waiting all summer to play. Introduces the X-Force characters with their own campaign, new characters. Let's take a look at the box. Now we'll start off with all of the different scenarios, starting off with the Marauders. Now they offer 2 different scenarios, one where you're playing against a variety of Marauders, shuffling them up, fighting 3 of them, as well as trying to make sure that you're saving these Morlocks. So I enjoy this scenario quite a bit, as the villains inside of the set themselves are different and unique, and then you're protecting these different Morlocks, but you can also utilize them in order to give you advantages and soak up different damage. A lot of fun. I enjoy both of the Marauder scenarios, with the second one having a specific Marauder that you're fighting and then the rest of the team ganging up on you. So it adds some more challenge to the different effects and varies the gameplay drastically. Next up, you have the Juggernaut scenario, where you have this monster powerhouse that's just constantly attacking, can gain overkill, all sorts of other damage, but you can weaken it by removing its helmet and giving it that weak spot, taking down its momentum. And it introduces Hope Summers, very similar to Robert Kelly in the last X-Men box. It's a character that you're trying to protect, but the way that these scenarios introduce it is when Hope Summers is on the board, usually Hope becomes the target of the attack. So you need to be defending Hope with yourself, with your different allies, but be careful with the overkill, because you're going to want to make sure that you have stuff to deal with that. So I love that you are trying to circumvent the damage, and it's not necessarily a good idea to chump block with your different characters, so it's going to encourage you to do it in more interesting ways, which I appreciate. You're using your allies to actually use their effects and their stats. You have Mr. Sinister, who gains special abilities and powers throughout the fight. I love the combination of this and how that boss fight evolves. So much fun. A great encounter to fight with Rogue, because all the different traits and tags. And then you have Strife, who has some crazy manipulation with changing your hand in order to combat its different values. So you can discard cards when they activate or at the start of the activations in order to mess up Strife's numbers to allow you to get a better idea of what sort of damage and output that he's going to have. It also presents an interesting deck building challenge, as Strife is going to eventually start changing the costs of different cards in your hand. So you want to be able to plan for that and maybe get upgrades out that you can use continuously and use your resources in other ways. Now moving on to the heroes in the box, you have Nathan Summers, Cable, and Cable's playstyle is so much fun. You're going to be using these side schemes. We saw these in the Lord of the Rings, the card game. There are additional challenges that you can put out onto the board, and if you remove the scheme, they're removed permanently from the game. They have victory points on them, so they are removed. You can't play them again, but generally they're going to give abilities for yourself and all the other players. They're super cool in the multiplayer setting. There's one in particular that gives all the players the ability to play a 3-cost or less support from their deck onto the field for free. It's amazing, and when you play Cable at the start of the game, you can place one onto the board for free, so I love doing that in that multiplayer game to just get everybody's engine started right away and get the game rolling, so you don't have to worry about that. You can focus on the problems at hand. So much fun. I do think that the leadership build that Cable comes with is not that fun to me. I played through with the pre-constructed deck once just to see how it flowed, and I felt that the leadership aspect felt a little shoehorned in. So I'm not a big fan of leadership in there, but as soon as I switched to a Justice build, it was so much fun having to think about my strategy from that deck construction. You are choosing which side schemes that you want to put into the deck, and then making a plan of to what side scheme is going to summon which order you want to play them, and then in the moment when you're actually fighting the enemy, deciding right then and there what you need for each situation. A lot of fun. That is Cable, and I could just see him getting better with the introduction of more of these players' side schemes. Next up is Domino, who has a completely different playstyle with discarding cards from the top of your deck to get additional bonuses, and then having ways to stack and move these different cards. She also introduces a slew of cards that trigger when they're discarded from the top of the deck, which you'll be doing a lot in her deck. That will give you additional allies to summon, more resources, and I've been playing this package in the Star-Lord deck and just having a blast pushing my luck and doing a bunch of big damage turns by milling myself purposely with Make the Call and just benefiting from these extra resources and extra ally summons. Dominoes herself has a lot of ranged. The core deck that she comes with is not great at all. I felt pretty underwhelming, but it's okay because her core cards are crazy powerful herself. So she has lots of ways to deal extra damage, extra thwarting. Her allies are crazy powerful. They have ways to do a bunch of splash damage, lots of AoE effects, and you have ways to do healing. Your defense stat is crazy, which is awesome. And the more I play with her, the more I just want to find the probability. It's called the probability field, I want to say, is that's what it's called. It's one of her superpowers that every time she uses a basic power, you're able to discard a card from the top of your deck to boost that effect. And I thought that it was just like a once per turn effect, but it is not. You can use it anytime Domino uses an effect. So anytime that you can ready her and get additional activations, you're just going off because you're able to get additional value every time you use it with that probability field. It's wild. So a lot of fun, the stacking and manipulating. It makes you get a lot out of your turns and gives you some fun sequencing puzzles throughout. So that is Domino, another interesting character. And the last thing that I want to mention is Cable also has some psionic support in their deck. And so this means that you'll be able to buff up some of your older cards, including things like Jean Grey, leaning into the Phoenix, playing the additional resource producers for psionic cards, making her a powerhouse. Also, Rogue is continuously getting more things that she can do, and Psionic is another trait that she has a lot of fun with, and playing with Hope Summers, seeing as she starts out on the board, she's Psionic, X-Force, and X-Men, so that's just a free target that you can use to get additional Psionic capabilities. So you can attach it to her, and then all of a sudden you are now Psionic and have access to all of the cards in that playstyle. So a lot of fun here. So many different deck building potentials. I do want to preface that I have not played this game as a campaign. I don't really like playing Marvel Champions as a campaign game. I like switching the characters each time I play. So I haven't actually played the campaign experience. I don't know if I will, but let me know if you've played the campaign experience for Marvel Champions. Let me know. I'm curious to hear what you think of it and if it's worth visiting. So I still haven't played the Spider-Man one or the X-Men one either. So yeah, I have not played any of the campaigns after the Mad Titan Shadow one. Yeah, I just sort of swore off of them after that, but God, the scenarios are wonderful, a lot of fun, and love the new customization and deck building in this one. That is Marvel Champions Next Evolution. Next up are the expansions for Zombicide 2nd Edition. These are the boys. They offer 3 different things. First off, they offer the 7 new characters that you can play as heroes, and so these heroes are super strong, but they have a bit of a downside. If you do end up using their super special ability, you could potentially hurt your teammates, so it's a risk that are you willing to take it, but you might accidentally damage your team because they are so strong. Next, you have the main characters from the boys. These are the innocent civilians, but they also have their own special abilities, effects, and they offer new item cards, including the Laser Baby, which is hilarious, but you also get a little companion for Billy Bitcher, the Bulldog Terror. Love it. But lastly, my favorite thing about this are the Soup Abominations. So these add new Abomination cards into the deck, as well as the Compound V cards. So the way they work is the soups themselves are pretty much invincible. They're so hard to defeat, and when one shows up, it's an immediate threat. You have to deal with it. And the way you do so is through Compound V. They're found by interacting with the weapon crates that are on the board, but you can also use the Compound V as something similar to like a Molotov cocktail. You can throw it for some instant damage and get out of some tough spots. But if you do that, the Compound V is limited. There's only so many of those weapon crates on the board. So if you end up spending all of it when one of those Soup Abomination comes out, you have to have something to deal with it. Otherwise, you're just gonna die. They're terrifying. So it's always this push your luck on, can you defeat the mission in time? When is the appropriate time to use the Compound V? Do you save it? Do you not? Or maybe you won't get a Abomination that's a soup. Maybe you can deal with it. But they each have their own specific condition that you must fulfill in addition to having Compound V. So there's an extra challenge that shows up whenever a soup hits the board. I love the Abomination pack here, and I think it's one that you should definitely check out, particularly if you like the series, and I think they do a good job bringing it to justice in this Zombicide set. So that is the Zombicide expansion for the boys. Next are 2 games that were provided to us for review purposes from Button Shy Games, starting off with Super Slopes. In Super Slopes, you're going to be drafting cards in order to create ski runs in front of you. When you draft, you actually follow the cards down, and you can go as far as the paths take you, and you'll take the cards that have something that runs off the board. It's an interesting thing to wrap your head around, but say that this was on the top, you would follow this down, and then that means that you would be able to take this card here. So you could pick that one and then add that to your own display. You're trying to make these connections on your board by connecting the different routes. You'll score for these diamonds, and you'll also be able to generate energy, which will allow you to get around these Yetis, not losing negative points, as well as being able to move through the forest. So you're trying to create a ski run that is going down the mountain. So you want cards going from highest to lowest and going in a specific order. You want your paths to cross each other. So whenever you're drafting cards, you're trying to maximize that. And you'll also be able to take cards that can give you special abilities for more options as you're actually playing the drafting portion. So there's reasons to take cards for the now as well as for the end game scoring, but you always want to have those ski runs in mind. Currently, I've only played this game solo, and it's one that I am okay with. I don't know how often I'll come back to it, especially with the strong solo showing of things like River Wild, Ancient Realm, and Skulls of Sedlic, and of course Sprawlopolis, which we'll talk about in a second, but I have not played this one yet and the 2 or 3 player count. So I'll give it a couple tries there before I give my final thoughts, but so far I think this one is okay at the solo mode, but there are much better games that I would rather play instead of this one. So that is Super Slopes. And next up is Ultimopolis, and this is crazy because it actually works. So Ultimopolis is a combination of the entire Sprawlopolis series, a simple game where you are going to be connecting all of these different routes in order to meet a specific scoring objective. Now, there are 3 different versions, Sprawlopolis, Agropolis, and Naturopolis, but this version, Ultimopolis, combines everything, and it does so elegantly, honestly. So the way it works is you're going to take all of your different standalone games and then shuffle them up and then take one card from each as an objective. So you're having objectives from all of the different expansions, but then you also take one from this specific expansion, giving you a 4th objective that combines the different things from all of the other expansions. It's wild. And then you're going to each round be looking at the top card from each of the sets and deciding which one of those you want to actually place in. So you have a choice between 3 cards each turn and then making the best that you can do with all of the different scoring criteria in mind. The fact that it's done so elegantly and simply is a marvel, honestly. You have all of this information that's spread across the sets, but it works perfectly, honestly. If you're familiar with the games, if you enjoy this and you have everything, I think that this expansion is one that you should get, honestly. It's wild that it works, and it's a fun challenge and changes the game drastically as you're looking at those variety of different scoring conditions and trying to be mindful when you're choosing which cards to play, which different scoring conditions you want to invest in. A lot of fun. This is the Ultimopolis expansion for Sprawlopolis, Agropolis, and Naturopolis. You do need all 3 to actually play this, but I recommend this one. That is Ultimopolis. And our last new arrival is another game that we got for review purposes from Wyrd Miniatures Games. This is Vagrantsong Encore. Now, this is a special box for Vagrantsong Encore. It's a preview that has 3 scenarios in it and some of the expansion content, so not everything is done. A lot of it is still in the development phase. That is something to be aware of, but I'm not going to cover any of my thoughts on this game right here, right now. I'm going to wait until that September 19th launch date for Vagrantsong Encore, and we'll have a video up on the channel that will have my pros and cons of these different sections, covering all of the new details, new things that are actually out there, and then give an overall score on the expansion as a whole. So just to let you know where my background is coming from for Vagrantsong itself, I think Vagrantsong is an incredible game overall, one of my favorite campaign games ever. I love the scenario nature of it and how things are changing, but the core mechanisms of the game are so solid and strong and flexible that they can be used for so many cool different scenarios. So Vagrantsong Encore, as you can imagine, and as you can see here, it's got new hints, new scenarios, new skills, and junk cards. I've played 3 of the scenarios from this new expansion, and that's what came in the box. So I've played through all of the content that is available currently for Encore, and as mentioned before, I'll give my full thoughts later down the line. But I wanted to let you know that there will be stuff coming for this for Vagrantsong Encore, and I'm looking forward to covering it more in detail there. So that is our last new arrival. That is the special preview kit for Vagrantsong Encore. And that finishes all of the arrivals into the library. This brings us to our upgrades, starting off with the Rectification Kit for Vindication. Now, this was not only a replacement part set, so there were some printing errors in the original Vindication, including missing a lot of cards, as well as having some of errors on tokens, as well as wooden tokens. And so they sent replacement parts for everything to everybody. It was awesome. So you had everything replaced, and it honestly added more content because of those cards that were missing. It was great, just a great injection of more things to play with in Vindication. But on top of that, they also sent us a bunch of extra promo cards. So you have more content just in general, just as a, hey, I'm sorry, and that's awesome. Vindication did a great job making sure that they fixed up their game and helped everybody who was affected. So that's the Vindication Rectification Kit. Next up, we have the Unmatched Storage and Accessories Game Found campaign. At the forefront, it has the storage system for all the different characters and their own little boxes. We did not actually go for this. I prefer my method using the burger token boxes and BCW boxes. You can take a look on the channel for the organizing for Unmatched. I love the way that it works. Space conscientious and lets you look at all of the fighters for all the different combinations. It's right at your fingertips there. But we did go ahead and get the battlefield mats, these double-sided mats. Love the neoprene feel, and they have some of the best mats on those sides. So new combinations on the alternate sides, which is cool. We also picked up the contest coins for the first player. Looks official, cool artwork, like it. And then lastly, we have the promo card pack. This has a bunch of alternate art cards for the game, and this is a bit of a hit or miss for me because some of the cards are cool because they replace cards that have multiples in each deck, and so you have alternate art in one deck, which is awesome. But then a lot of these are one-ofs that are replacing direct cards over, so you're only able to use one of them at a time, which is a little unfortunate because I like having the variety of art in the deck, which is why I like seeing them for like the ×2 or ×3 cards. That being said, I also think that some of the art from the original game is better than the alternate art, so I don't know why I would play one over the other just to say that I have the promo. And then I am missing the foil treatment that are in the other promos for the game. A lot of the cards for Unmatched that have already been released as promos are the same art, but with a foil treatment, so I would like to have seen that on some of these cards here too. So some hits and miss on the alternate art, but I do like the contest coin as well as the battlefield mats. That is the Unmatched Storage and Accessories for Game Found. This next section, I'm going to go pretty quickly through. We've got 5 different promo sets that we got for a bunch of different games in the library. Starting off with the Iron Maiden promo sets. These include things for Zombicide, 2nd edition, Death May Die with new Madness cards, and then Massive Darkness 2 with new enemies. You've also got brand new characters for Death May Die, characters for Ankh, new Guardians that you can recruit, more characters for Zombicide, new Abominations, and then to top it off, you even have some content for Rising Sun with a new monster that can get shuffled in with the every game monsters. I also love that the Ankh promos include Pharaoh promos, so it'll give you brand new scenarios that you can interact with, which is excellent. Love that when you're able to open up that game and just give more content for something you're already enjoying. So this is, if you have a bunch of CMON stuff, I would recommend this because you can pretty much use everything if you've got a couple of their titles. The miniatures are used for the different cards for each of these games. That is something to be aware of, and you'll have to pick and choose where you actually want to store the miniature at which time. So that is something to be aware of if you do get these. The next promo set is for Turzi Jr. These are all baby-themed expansions that are for a bunch of David Turzi games. They come in 2 different flavors. You have these smaller, just add more expansions. They're extra event cards or tiles, as well as bosses for Vengeance, the boss baby. And then these more in-depth expansions that add new mechanisms, like the Warmth of the Cat expansion or the Children of the Inca. And our last set of promos is for the Dice Tower BGG promos. You can get them all in BGG Store, and they are for so many different games that I'm not going to list them all here, but we've got things like Vagrantsong, you've got Unmatched, you've got Underwater Cities, you have Aquatica, a bunch of different expansion content for so many different games. Pretty much just looked at all of them and said, ooh, that sounds like something that will add some new fun flair to that gaming experience. So lots of different choices when it comes to the different BGG Store promos. And that brings us to our last section, all of the pre-orders, starting off with Arkham Horror, the card game, the Feast of Hemlock Vale campaign expansion, as well as the Investigator expansion. So these both are going to offer new characters, but also a new campaign to play them in, and this takes place at the Feast of Hemlock Vale. You're going to be on this island and trying to uncover the mystery in a limited amount of time. I love the complete reverse that they took from the last campaign expansion, where instead of globetrotting, now you're in one isolated place. This is my favorite type of scenario setting for this game. I love playing the Innsmouth Conspiracy and how it all takes place in just that small town, and so the intrigue and the mystery of this is exciting for me. You have new characters, the scientist, Kate Winthrop, some old favorites, and we're bringing back the Curse and Bless tokens. You've got Hank Sampson, who has some options that he can take when he actually is defeated. New survivor cards that really lean into the farm town theme, this old place in the middle of nowhere, and then a mystery that we'll get to uncover. Now, I don't want to get too much information when it comes to the actual scenario and setting itself. It's something that I love going blind into, so that's all I'm going to talk about here for the Feast of Hemlock Vale, but looking forward to seeing more player cards that have to do with the Curse and Bless mechanisms, adding those tokens to the bag, as well as bonded cards, because I love the concept of cards transforming and having other cards that are associated to them. So that is a Feast of Hemlock Vale for Arkham Horror, the card game. Next up, we have X23, the new Marvel Champions Hero Pack, and this has a huge emphasis on getting the Honey Badger ally out. A lot of X23 cards are going to want you to get Honey Badger out, get additional value if she is out, and then Honey Badger herself, whenever she takes damage, is going to allow you to ready X23. So you have a pair that is going to be comboing back and forth with alter ego abilities and hero actions that are going to help support this playstyle. I'm looking forward to try it, as it's something we haven't really seen in the game yet, and it's one that I want to explore. And our last pre-order here is for the Deadpool Hero Pack from Marvel Champions, and this one looks absolutely awesome. So not only does it include Deadpool himself, which is a crazy character that is going to be playing with health as a resource. Whenever Deadpool dies, he'll set his health to 1, flip back over to alter ego, and then put an acceleration counter on the main scheme. So essentially, you can't die. And when you're back in alter ego, you can full heal with an 8 recovery stats. You can restore your health all the way up. So it's a different way of playing with health as a resource, which I love, that it's not just a carbon copy from something like Wolverine. This gives you a more risky play style with having your health truly be not something you're super worried about and something you're going to use to propel your other cards forward, and then the threat being the main way that you can potentially lose the game. So I like this change and take on the health as a resource playstyle. Now, the thing I'm most excited for in this set are actually these cards in the background, and this is the pool aspect. So they are new pink aspect cards that you can use with any character, and they're reimaginings of old cards, and that's what it seems like, at least for a lot of them. So you'll have a combination of some leadership cards with new effects, as well as aggression cards, all of these different concepts put into one, but then added with these Deadpool specific types of cards, including things like Dogpool here. There are a bunch of allies that don't have any consequential damage, so you can keep on using them. They have crazy tags, but they're also going to delve into some of these additional icons, like an extra acceleration icon just for having Dogpool on the board. So maybe you do want this character to die, or maybe you delve into it and just take on those additional negatives. So I love this playstyle, how you're trying to push yourself as much as possible, taking on all these additional negative effects, but you do get an amazing payout for it. And that includes things like the healing factor here, getting additional healing on top of the other ridiculous things that you'll be doing with the pool aspect. So looking forward to trying this in all of the different heroes decks, and I love that this hero pack has pretty much given you something new to try with every other hero in the game. So that is the Marvel Champions hero pack for Deadpool. And that's the library update for September 1st, 2023. What entered your personal collection last month? What did you think about the games that entered our library? What do you think about our thoughts on them? And what do you think in general about the games that we discussed here? Any games that we missed? Any games that should be a part of our library? What things should we be looking to pre-order in the near future? And what do you hope to see on next month's library update? Love to hear what you think. Thank you so much for watching. SideGame Strong